we need to come right here. We need to talk about right here. See, at the end of 12 months, miserable, miserable, miserable. When you think it can't get more miserable, ooh, something happens right here. And what do you think it is? It's a flyby in the heavens, and it shakes this rock we're on like jello. And there are earthquakes, Jesus said, in diverse places. All these are the beginnings. Beginnings of what? Beginnings of. I believe there's going to be a flyby, and I believe there's going to be shaking in all kinds of places. And if I was a Californiite, whatever, I'm not sure I would want to camp on top of the San Andreas. Just thinking, okay? I believe that what Jesus said would mark the beginning of the end is going to happen. There will be an earthquake in Jerusalem. Every stone is coming down because there's still several hundreds of those original temple stones standing atop one another. Every stone will come down. And if they do come down, what else is coming down with them? Come on. The dome of the rock. Now, that is the third holiest site in all of Islam. The dome of the rock. The Mosque of. Okay? Now, when that falls down, there will be joy and dancing in Islam. Now, if you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you. Okay? No. Every wild man with an AK-47 will be shooting. And they will be on the way. They will believe, because that's the way they think, that those Israelis did it. And they're just trying to get us out of the way and build their temple there. Now, all of that is true, but they didn't do it. God did it. They're coming. They're coming. Now, the Israelis have two choices. Do something or do nothing. That's it. That's it. I believe they're going to pop the cap on an atomic weapon, and Damascus will be no more. Is their Bible predicting something like that? Yeah, it just says Damascus will be burned and never peopled again. Yeah. No, I believe there's... And by the way, if you read right there in Jesus' conversation to the disciples, that's Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and ye shall be hated of all men. Well, what did we do? They've always hated us. Yeah, but they're coming after us now. And guess what? Who is allied to Israel? The lion with eagle's wings. And who is allied to the other guys? The bear and the leopard. They are allied as of now. And folks are going to be waiting, holding their breath around the world to see who pushes the button first. Will it be the lion? Will it be the bear? Will it be the leopard? Or will it be all three? And at such a time as this, there is only one, not two. It's not multiple choice. There is only one human being on this rock who can step into the middle of that and not look like Swiss cheese. He's called the Pope. Now, if you want to know how the deadly wound is healed, the deadly wound was the Protestant Reformation. I have a discussion on tape, on DVD, that proves to you the deadly wound was not in 1798. The Pope was not taken prisoner in 1798. It was 1799. So much for. That was not the deadly wound. The deadly wound was the Protestant Reformation. And what happens right here is the deadly wound is healed. Revelation 13. And all the world wonders. Now, this is what you may or may not understand. But right now, we've got to, they call it hydrating the banks of the world. We've got to put money back into the banks of the world to reinstate international commerce and banking and all that, is going down the tubes almost immediately now. This new world order is going to be financed. How are they going to? It's a shell game. So this is where I'm asking you to listen carefully. How are they going to kick this can down the road one more time? Ten years ago, it was decided with the invasion of Iraq that the new international order of nations would reinvigorate the global economy. We would move over the next 10 years, and we have arrived at the 10 years. Plus, we will reinvigorate, we will rehydrate the banking systems of the world. And what we will do is bankrupt the Iraqi banks and economy. And we'll bring the value of the dinar down to a fraction of a penny. And we'll do what happened in Kuwait when Saddam invaded Kuwait. So what happened? He collapsed their banks, collapsed the economy, turned $3.40 to 60 cents, whatever the value was of the Kuwaiti dinar at the time, to fractions of a cent. And a handful of people, George Soros was one, who took advantage of the Kuwaiti dinar from $3.42 down to fractions of a penny. And so they didn't want to run on the banks. They didn't want speculation. So what they did is announce, we're talking about the World Bank and all, they announced with the Kuwaiti government, once they got Saddam's boys out of the way, that, well, we're not going to revalue yet. And they revalued the next day. You have to keep things like this from the public. You have to keep this quiet, or there will be speculation and runs on the banks and on and on and on and on. And they took it back to like $3.40, 50, 60 cents. Soros bought it for fractions of a penny. He became a multi-billionaire in one day. And he still got the money. You can ask certain persons. So the plan was, well, what happened there is let's repeat it, but this time let's take the Iraqi dinar. And so a plan was worked out whereupon the United States of America, I didn't say that, but the United States of America decided to print new Iraqi dinars. We printed it. We printed their currency. We printed their money. We didn't print billions. We printed trillions. Well, the French, who had, quotes, been part of the coalition to go into Iraq, said, well, we want to print some too. So the international order said, well, you can print some, but you got to stop at 26 trillion. Well, they went to a quadrillion. So everybody has been waiting for this glorious day. Well, while we're waiting, China has become a power to be reckoned with. And so the Chinese said, we want in on this deal. Now, this is not in the news. This is not in the papers. But you have to understand that the information is there. if you just know where to look, where to go, and where to ask. So this has become a real big deal. And the Chinese were rebuffed when they said, we want to be part of this deal. No, you didn't print any of this. Okay, we're going to go to Vietnam. You invaded them, collapsed their economy. We're going to go to Vietnam and back up the Vietnamese dong. So here we are, Vietnamese dong, Iraqi dinar, and now the Iranians have pushed in the last 3 days. In the last 3 days. And so what we're going to do is we're going to RV. Now they thought that they would keep the public out of it. So in November of 2013, quietly, the word went out to the congressmen and senators, U.S., and their families. Come in quietly, come in by appointment, and we will transfer your Iraqi dinars to what's called SKRs, safekeeping receipts, which the IMF allows certain big banks to issue, which is the same as money. Well, it's not currency, but you can borrow against it. So in November of 2013, that would be the 10 years, they thought they would sneak the congressmen and senators and their families and special friends. You ever heard of special friends before? They would sneak them in, and the rest of the peons, well, they can go eat peanuts. The only problem was the peons were finding out. And so they ran out as fast as they could and bought Vietnamese dong, Iraqi dinar, and, okay? Because there are 22 currencies in the first basket of revaluation. It's called the RV. Revaluation. The RV. Now the RV is a step toward the GCR, the Global Currency Reset. And it will be done by baskets. There's 200 and whatever, 26 to whatever number of currencies that have to be revalued, but it's going to be done in stages. The first stage is supposedly underway. Supposedly. Only time will tell. I can tell you that at the minimum, the Iraqi dinar will be $3.71. So this has come to an international push and shove between the superpowers. The Russians and the Chinese are conspiring behind our backs or in front of our faces. And they have said to one another, go dump those U.S. T-bills, which the Chinese started about 30 days ago. Go dump them. Bankrupt those sorry so-and-sos. We're knocking on that door, guys. We're knocking on that door. Okay? So somebody has to do something and get this international bailout online and whatever and whatever. That's called the GCR or the RV. Ellen White in this very context says, an angel spoke to me and said, tell the people, hurry, hurry, hurry. In this context, okay? One more thing. Then we're going to get to the daily. And you're going to love that one. One more thing. One of the biggest complaints of the brethren when they decided to do us in and kick us out was, folk are sending you the sacred tithe. And I said, well, we didn't ask for it. We've never asked anybody for tithe money. But brethren, you really ought to check it out. Sister White had this conversation a long time ago with the president of the Colorado Conference. He found out she was sending her tithe to independent ministries. And he read her the Riot Act. And this is what she said. This is all in print. It's available. This is what she said. She said, "Brother, you better be quiet, or others will find out what I'm doing and join me." I love it. You'll want to get into Volume 4 Testimonies, and you will see that this very issue is discussed by her in context. Christ leaves instruction behind. He designs that tithes and offerings shall be used for the support of the ministry and to send the printed truth throughout the land. That's a direct quote. So, people come, people call, people write, and they say, "Well, this is tithe, Brother Wheeling." Fine. We use it to send the printed truth throughout the land. Okay? I'm just telling you this because, folk, there's about to be a change. There's about to be a change. It's going to look bad, and then it's going to look wonderful. And this is the way human beings react, including Seventh-day Adventists. Like it or not, they are human beings. When things look bad, we go to church. When things look good, we go to the beach. Are you listening? And this is going to look good when finally it gets turned. It's going to look good. And the bookwork, we'll take care of that another day. No. Lord, send the money fast because we've only got a little bit of time to deal with this matter. All right? I could tell you for hours. I better tell you this last little bit. We just sent one of our staff members, one of the members of our ministry, to Cuba. Oh, Cuba's been out of touch and untouchable since 1950. Now, we find countries and we design ways to go into those countries and go to every home if we can, or at least to hundreds of thousands. So we sent Tony Harriman. I don't want to give too much information here, but we sent Tony Harriman. He went over for the better part of a week. And he came back and he said, "Man, we can ship books into Cuba." Really? They're not going to confiscate them. They're not going to dump them in the ocean. They're not going to tax us to death. I'm telling you, we can ship books to Cuba. Well, he said, "Yeah, here's the deal. The denomination has shipped books to Cuba 2 or 3 times. Containers. But the problem is this. The church always has to pay for them, and they don't have the money to pay for them. So what they have done is bring the container filled with books, and it sits there because the church members are so poor, they can't buy the books. Well, that's not what we do. We give the books. We pay the shipping. We cover the cost. So we have a plan. Tony brought back a plan. This is the first step in it. Buscando la Paz. That's Steps to Christ. We call it Finding Peace Within. It's Steps to Christ with 20 complete Bible studies. Incredible book. Now, there are 32,000 SDA church members in Cuba, and they're all evangelistic. A little church is like 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 people max. And they are all over that island, all over. So what we want to do is 32,000 members. We want to print 32,000 Buscán de la Paz and another 32,000. We want to print 65,000 books. Okay? That will fill a 20-foot container. We want to ship a 20-foot container of Buscán de la Paz. You listening? Now they have had the discussion while Tony was there. The plan and the strategy will be this. We're not going to sell these books to church members, but we will be responsible for giving 2 books to every church member. That'll get the 65,000, right? 2 books. One is yours and your family's, and the other one is for you to give away as a witness. Wow! How long will it take? Weeks. We have already stepped out in faith, and we don't have the money. We've stepped out in faith. We're ordering 65,000. You listening? As soon as we know those are out, we're printing several times 65,000 of Who Are the Angels. Where are you, John Vega? Where are you? When you went to San Francisco, San Francisco.
Super Bowl 50.
What did they want on the streets?
They took that book. They wouldn't take the other books.
There's something about folks in San Francisco.
They didn't want any other books. They only wanted, that's the only one.
Who Are the Angels?
Every time you gave them, like 3 out of 4 people would accept it.
That's 2 chapters out of the Great Controversy. Right here. State of the Dead in San Francisco.
The other books you have to fight for them to get 120.
So, in the second container, we can get hundreds of thousands of Who Are the Angels. We're going to convince everybody in Cuba the dead are dead. Container number 3. Every home. 80 pages from the Great Controversy. And where does it go? Jesus coming. And we're going to heaven. I'll be able to sleep on that one. Get it done, get it done, get it done. I'm telling you this, I'm taking a moment to tell you this because some of you may want to help with Cuba. We've had a bit of a hitch in the get along. Uh-oh. Some folk got word and used PayPal to send a contribution. And they said Project Cuba, and PayPal would not allow it to go through. Okay? You got to understand international politics. We don't want the bad press. We don't want this. We don't. So they wouldn't allow the contributions to go through. So now we got to undo and backtrack and go back. And so what we're saying to folk, if you want to help with the Cuban project, you just put Mission World-C.
That's if you go through that.
Okay. We got to get here to the daily. The daily is what launches the 3 and apart years. Whatever the daily represents, it's the taking away of the daily. That's how the book of Daniel ends, chapter 12, about verse 11, thereabouts. And the angel Michael closes the book because in verses 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, Daniel is protesting. I hear, but I just still don't understand. And in Southern English, the word to Daniel was cool it. Because it's not for you. It's for the time of the end. Okay? So in verse 11, this is the pronouncement from Michael, if you know who Michael is. By the way, I get so many people calling, writing, wanting this. I don't understand the 2300. Would you please explain it? Well, that can take time. And they got hundreds of folk, and they ask the same question. I don't understand who Michael is. How do we know who Michael is? Can you prove it? Yeah, so I did a DVD on the 2300 how to answer the question on the 2300 and who is Michael. Okay? You can get it online free of charge, or you can harass us and we'll send it to you free of charge. Listen, this is verse 11. This is Michael. And from the time, the is there. The article the is there. That means it is a punctiliar point in time. It is a specific point in time. If you get into the original language here. From the time the daily is taken away, removed, and the abomination that makes desolate set up, it will be 1,290 days. You'll have to forgive me, but I'm going to do it. The early Advent pioneers, the early fathers of the movement, were so excited about Jesus coming in 1844, and of course he didn't. But we have now formed a denomination, we have a movement, and we're telling the whole world about the fulfilling prophecies of Daniel and Revelation, and we've got 457 BC, and we've got, you know, how it's all worked out. And about 15 to 20 years after the formation of the organization, the denomination, about 15 to 20 years later, would be approaching 1888. And 1888 had a special spot in Adventist history, kind of like 1844, you know. Dear souls come to me all the time, all the time. Brother Wheeling, do you believe in 1844? Well, yes, I do. I also believe in 1845. Oh, they are not happy. Did I tell you about my visit to New Zealand? Friends wanted us to see some of the country, and so we had taken a ride on this day. We were way out in the middle of nowhere, and there was a little kiosk on the side of the road selling ice cream, drinks, and you know how it is. And we stopped. Got a little ice cream cone. I stepped out of the kiosk out, walking around, looking at the countryside. Very different. And I turned around and looked back, and I saw a plaque about this big, about 4 by 6. A brass plaque, very shiny, very bright. And it was attached to the wall beside the door into the kiosk. I didn't see it going in, but I'm looking back, and there it is. Wonder what that's all about. So I went over and I had to get closer and closer and closer to read it. And this is what was engraved on the plaque. Are you interested? Yes. On this site in 1845, nothing happened. I will not tell you that I laughed out loud. Do you believe in 1844? Yes, I do. But I no longer hold the traditional view because it was not the time of the end. Yes, but Sister White said. I said, yes, Sister White. So did Paul, Peter, James, John. A whole bunch of folks said the same thing. God has arranged matters in such a way that His people in every age can believe He's coming and tell the world. Now, what was discovered in the 1880s, about 20 years after 1864, when the denomination was formed, what began to happen was we started sending some men away for more education in biblical languages, history. In other words, we wanted an educated, prepared ministry. Nothing wrong with that. And some of these people were bright. They were bright students. And they said, We've got it all worked out, and we're telling everybody we can meet it's all worked out, and we can tell you what year this is, and what year that is, and what year the 1260, and what year the 1290, and what year the 13th. Oh, we got it all worked out. Except we got it in years instead of days, but that's okay. And oh, by the way, they begin to say to one another, oh, by the way, what was the daily? Duh. According to the angel, this is where you start counting. And you don't even know what the daily is, where it is, when it is, and what it is, but you got everything else all worked out. It's nonsense. Forgive me. It's nonsense. So the brethren decided to do the right thing. And they said, let's send a delegation and talk to Sister White. And they went to see her and they said, Sister White, what is the daily? And she said, I haven't received any light on that. I don't know. Oh, but we've got everything else worked out. If you don't know what the daily is, you don't know where to start counting. It's that simple. And you just as well be quiet, shut up, and sit down. Now, the brethren were not happy. They weren't unhappy with Sister White, but they were not happy because if God has light on this, we want to know what the light is. And they recognized you can't be building this prophetic chart thing and telling the world about it when you don't even know what it is. Well, things got really tough by 1888. Not just about the daily. That was only part of the dissension and whatever. Things began to get real tough because Jones and Wagner were coming along saying, you know, this didn't happen and that didn't happen and that didn't happen, and it's not right for us to say this. And so the elder ministers referred to Jones and Wagner as these young men, these whippersnappers. They don't know anything, and they're telling all of us that we're mistaken. And so what does the General Conference president do? He goes to see Sister White. Sister White, I don't know what to say anymore because you've changed your position. In other words, she was against Jones and Wagner's position, but she changed it once she got... And so she said, well, that's my position. And they were so happy they bought her a one-way ticket to Australia for 10 years. They sent her down with all the other convicts. You know that the Aussies are proud to be related to the convicts if they can trace their heritage back to the original convicts. They're proud. I tell them all the time, you're still convicts. Still a bunch of crooks. You know, for the daily has meaning, obviously. The question is, what is the meaning of the daily and taking it away? So I began earlier in the day saying to you, these are my ideas. That's all I can do is share with you what years of study and consideration and prayer lead me to conclude at the present time. And I reserve the right to change my mind. But I never do. No, I do. I do. Let's see how we can do this. This is a look down on the sanctuary. All the prophetic times in Daniel and Revelation are sanctuary times. All the prophetic times are moed. They are times and seasons in the sanctuary. Miller got studying in the book of Daniel, and he said this is all about the sanctuary, and that's how he arrived at his dates and all of these different things. He was looking at the sanctuary. He was onto something.
Amen.
Taking away the daily. Well, the things that were shown to Daniel, I'm quoting, were afterward revealed to John on the Isle of Patmos and are open. When the time came in my own personal study regarding the daily, I discovered that it's mentioned 5 times in the book of Daniel. 5 times. The daily. The daily. Now, laws of hermeneutics, those are rules and regulations for reading the Bible, applying the Bible, etc., etc. The laws of hermeneutics say that the first time a word or a picture or whatever it is introduced, everything that follows thereafter should be understood in that context.
Amen.
In other words, the daily, whatever it is, and you conclude it is in the first mention, then the second and the third mention cannot be different. They can be an expansion of, an enlargement upon, but they cannot deny the original use of the term. 5 times in the book of Daniel. Now, every time it appears in the book of Daniel, the King James translators, who were not idiots, they were not sinners, they were trying to do the best they could. Every time the word daily appeared in the book of Daniel and they were translating it into the King James, they added the word sacrifice. And you can recognize it in the Bible because it's always italicized, which means it's added. It's not original to the text. It's added by the translators, hopefully, prayerfully, for clarification. Ellen White comments on this matter in early writings, and she says, I was shown that the word sacrifice was added and did not belong to the passage. It just muddied the waters. They were trying to make it clear, but it muddied the waters. So I searched every time the daily was used, appears in the book of Daniel. And I had to mentally, I didn't mark my Bible out. I don't believe in doing that. But I had to mentally omit sacrifice because it doesn't belong to the passage. Forget Ellen White. It doesn't belong to the passage. It's added. So she says the thing shown to Daniel after it's shown to John and is open to our understanding. Wow. Well, let me find daily in the book of Revelation. And I went from cover to cover and it's not there. I will tell you, honestly, I was exasperated. You know what that means? It means about wore myself out silly. Going back and forth and trying to find, making an honest attempt to understand what is the daily. What? Well, the brethren had worn themselves out too. I don't know how far down the road I'd gotten. And something happened in 2003. The United States and Great Britain invaded Iraq. And so I said out loud, now that's the ram and the he-goat. And you promised Daniel, and Daniel is saying this is the time of the end. And I want to know what the daily is. I don't think I was sinning. I don't think I was out of place. I said, I want to know, Lord, I want to know. And this is what came to my mind. Revelation 10 and Revelation 11. Why did it come to my mind? Are you well enough acquainted with Revelation to know what Revelation 10 is? Revelation 10 is a carbon copy repeat of Daniel chapter 12 with Michael, arms lifted toward heaven, swearing by the throne of God that there should be time no longer, it says in Revelation 10. Now the picture is in Daniel 12, Daniel shut up the words and sealed the book. In Revelation 10, he has the little book open. And John is commanded by the angel, take the little book in the hand of the angel which is open and eat it, devour it. It will be sweet and it will be belly bitter. You listening? I knew, wait a minute. This is Daniel expanded. And I got to the end of chapter 10, which says, take it and eat it. And I did, Daniel said. John said, pardon me. I did. It was sweet in my mouth, bitter in my belly. And the angel said, now you must prophesy again. So this is the again of Daniel. Right here. This is it. This is the things shown to Daniel and sealed were open to John on the Isle of Patmos and are open to our understanding. The last verse of chapter 10 says, now you must prophesy again. The first verse of chapter 11, and remember, verse numbers and chapters are added, just like this was added. It's the same vision. It's the same conversation. And so, an angel handed me a measuring stick. And he said, get up, John, and measure the... Come on, what does it say? Measure the temple, and them that worship therein. Tell me another word for temple. Sanctuary. Get up. And we know it's talking about the sanctuary because you keep reading and what the context is. Get up, measure the temple of them that worship therein. But the court, which is outside or without, see, this is the sanctuary proper. This is the court, which is without. Don't measure that, because it's given to the Gentiles. And the holy city they will trample underfoot for 42 months. I knew instantly. There's your daily. That's where the daily sacrifice was offered. Every day for years and years and centuries. Morning and evening. Don't measure the court. It represents what's given, and that's Jerusalem, by the way. It's given to the nations. That's what's going to happen here. When the daily is taken away, the nations are going to step in at the unction of and the saying of the Pope, and Jerusalem will be taken away from the Jews and the Islamites, and it will become the property of the nations. Gentiles. The word Gentiles is from the Greek. Nations. That's the daily that's going to be taken away. And if we don't take it away and turn it to the property of the nations, then we're all going down. We're going down. Somebody's going to push the button and that's going to be it. This is how you get the lion, the bear, and the leopard in Revelation 13 all together in one suit. Mouth of the lion, feet of the bear, body of the leopard. These are traditional enemies. And the Pope says, and it says in Daniel 7, the little horn subdues 3 of the horns. This is the daily that is going to be given to the Gentiles, the nations. And they're going to trample it underfoot for 3.5 years. Those are the 3.5 years that the 2 mighty prophets from heaven come down. I'll just tell you right now, I am planning to watch CNN and Fox. I don't know about the rest of them. But I want to see Moses. I'm going to give him the eagle eye. I didn't say the evil eye. I said the eagle eye. Yeah, I want to see Moses. And I want to see Elijah. Now, you understand who Moses and Elijah are? Moses is Jesus, and Elijah is Michael. Yeah. I want to see these guys. They're going to come. They're going to be real. It says they're going to be dressed in sackcloth and ashes. I don't know what that's going to look like. Probably blue jeans with holes in the knees. Now, I have nothing to back up or prove the point I'm about to share with you. All right? Freely confess. I am mystified by the 3.5 years. Where did that come from? Why did Jesus come and wait 30 years to preach and then preach for 3.5 years? Why is the devil given 3.5 years to play? What are the 3.5 years about? Now, this is the only thing I can invent in my brain. Okay? It's an invention of my brain. The possibility that Mama and Daddy, Adam and Eve, were in the garden for 3.5 years before things went wrong. And Jesus had to spend 3.5 years to buy it back. I don't know that that's so, don't know that that's true, but it is a mind-boggler. Once you get on it and start, wow. Now, from the time the daily is taken away and the abomination making death. See, it is my opinion in prophecy that what starts all of this is a great earthquake. And it shakes all those stones, the last ones standing of the original temple, or at least Herod's temple. All those stones are going to be shaken down. And that is going to set into motion 1.3 billion mad Muslims. In other words, you ain't seen nothing yet. There's a reason for the 3.5 years. They were granted to Jesus and now granted to the enemy. There is something hidden in the words of Jesus. Hidden is not the right word, but there is something in the words of Jesus. And it shall turn to you for a witness at that time. Once again, that is specific, punctiliar time. It's not just any time. And what happens, this is the time in Revelation chapter 12 where the devil has come down to you having great wrath because he knows his days are numbered. Sometimes I'm reminded of the things and the events that have occurred in my life, my not just lifetime, but in my life. My mother and father were married. My father would have gone into the war. But he had polio when he was 2 years of age, and they wouldn't take him in the service. My father came from a very respectable family. His father, my grandfather, was secretary of the Chamber of Commerce in several important southern cities. He was the kind of person that dressed in a 3-piece suit, even when he was going nowhere. He would get up in the morning, he would shave, he would bathe, and he would put on a 3-piece suit and put on a hat and put a gold watch in his watch pocket and a white starched shirt and a tie and go sit on the front porch and rock for half the day. Where are you going, Papa? Well, I'm just enjoying the day. He was a business person, and he was respected in his day, and the Depression hit, and they lost everything that they had, along with a lot of other people. And they spent the rest of their lives poor. But they wanted their sons, and my father was the oldest son, they wanted their sons to grow up and be respectable, and they wanted their sons to grow up and be well educated, as my grandfather and grandmother were. And my dad was sent away to Duke University, founded by Christians. And he got in with the wrong crowd and started drinking. And he spent the rest of his life and mine until he died as a hopeless alcoholic. My family and my growing up was what you would refer to as a dysfunctional family. My mother cried all the time. My dad was not mean with his liquor, but he was just worthless. And it had a terrible effect on my life, my early life. My brothers not so much as me, because as the others came along, my mother depended on me and said to me again and again and again, "You are the man of the family, and you are responsible." And I was a kid. I don't even like to think about it. Anyhow, as a child, from time to time, we would go visit my other grandparents. Now, it turns out that my grandfather, on the other side of the family, on my mother's side, immigrated from England along with his parents and his brother. They were coal miners in England, and they immigrated to the United States and immediately were sent to the coal mining districts of Alabama. Now, my pop was, I don't know how to say it, except he was mean as a snake. He hated Seventh-day Adventists. He referred to them as Seventh-day adders. And he gave my poor grandmother hell. She wanted a quarter just to ride the bus to church on Sabbath morning. "Maggie, you walk." And she would walk 3 miles one way, 3 miles back. We were going to visit my pop and grandmother Chadburn. And I'm a kid. I'm 6, 7 years of age. And I am an avid book person. I just, when I was 2 years old, my mother bought the Compton's Encyclopedia for me. 2 years old. Of course, I couldn't read yet, but I knew which volume and how many pages to go to get to the picture that I wanted to see. When my dad would come home in the evening, "Daddy, look at these fish. Look at this." I'm 2 years of age. By the time I was 6, thereabouts, I'm at my grandparents', and they got a little bookcase and some books, and one of them belongs to my grandmother, the Seventh-day Adventist adder. And I pulled the book off the shelf. Why did I do that? Because it had all kinds of beautiful marbling on the edges. It was not an ordinary book. Something said, this is a special book. So I pulled it down. And I would put it on the floor, and I would plop down in the floor, and I'd turn the pages. The ugliest critters I ever saw in my life. The book was Daniel and the Revelation by Uriah Smith. And from that day to this day, those images are in my mind. In my mind. God planted those images in my mind so that one day. Now, what He has done specifically in my life, Ellen White promises, is about to happen in millions of other lives. When Daniel and Revelation are better understood, believers will have an entirely different religious experience. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. It's probably going to take place right here. When the Israelis nuke Damascus, I rather suspect folks will be watching the news. I just. Now, what the first 3 or 3.5 years have not accomplished in prophetic matters, this is really the beginning of the end. From the time the daily is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate, that sits where he ought not, stands where he ought not, opposes and puts to death God's two witnesses. The days are counted, measured. And I don't know if I'll be alive when that time comes. I don't know. That's in God's hands. But I will tell you this. I am looking for places, for friends, people I know, like some of you, that are living on top of, and you never know. So we talk about November 8, January 20, and 12 months. Now you and I have something to watch for. Yeah. If it really works out the way it appears it could and may work out, then you need to be very serious. You and your family need to be very serious about a plan. You may not know where you're ending, where you're going to go, and where you will wind up, but you better have a way of getting out of harm's way. Now, there are people who always say, well, what difference does it make? I've done it, but let's do it again. Is this Charles Wheeling, or is this Charles Wheeling? Few electrical things running around up here. Is this me or is this me? What is the answer? Yes. Thank you. The answer is yes. You'll find it in Genesis 1 and 2. I was made out of mud, and breath was put in. Now, it would be nice not to need this. And Jesus treated it somewhat with contempt. He said, well, if your right hand bothers you, cut it off. If your right eye bothers you, pull it out. I never get happy when I read those. I just, Now, Jesus is talking about things in a spiritual dimension. And because I have felt pain, I'm interested in the physical dimension. And if you read Jesus carefully enough, you will see that when the time of the end comes, he says, watch out for the physical dimension. He said to the disciples the first time he sent them out, don't take an extra coat, don't take extra shoes, don't take a sword, don't take any money. At the end of his ministry, just before he left, he said, you better take an extra coat, extra shoes, extra money, and a sword. Somehow folk never read that side. Somehow folk never get there. So what is coming is very real at both levels, in both dimensions. It's going to be physical, and smart people, Jesus said, they watch and they act. That's here. And smart people make sure that they have given their souls, keeping, and salvation to Jesus, and He will take care of that side. Now that's where I am. So when I come to people like you, I do not hesitate to talk about the physical dimension, because that's the one that you and I live in every day. Every once in a while, we get spiritual, especially when things get tough. You understand? We're all human beings. That's not sinful, but we're all sinful because someone made a wrong choice, and I'm living in a briar patch, and I'm living in a hot place, and I'm living hand to mouth. And I don't think you and I deserve it. Neither does God. Thank you, Lord. And He promises that in time, He's going to make it all right. All that the cankerworm hath eaten, I will repay. Now, I'm not the only guy on the block who thinks in these terms. On a certain occasion, the disciples came to Him. I suspect it was Peter. But anyhow, they came and they said, Lord, we've left our nets. Expensive. We've left our boats. Expensive. We left our wives complaining at home. Expensive. What are we going to get for all of this? Selfish you, Peter, James, John. Selfish you. No. Fair question. What are we going to get for all of this? You remember what Jesus said?
100 times.
He said, there's no man who having done, there's no man who's not going to receive some measure in this life and in the life to come. So as long as I'm here, I want some of this. I don't want to go hungry. I don't want to go naked. I don't want to go broke. Nothing, that's not sinful. But I have to understand that until Jesus becomes King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and He's not yet. That happens in the sanctuary, at the end of the sanctuary work. Until Jesus becomes King of Kings and Lord of Lords, He does not receive His inheritance. And you and I don't receive our inheritance till He receives His. Does that make sense?
Amen.
Our inheritance is in Him. And so it is the judgment that is going to be called into session that is going to award Him by the vote of heaven the lawful right to take back the territory. Worthy, worthy is the Lamb to receive glory, honor, majesty, power, dominion. They're going to give it to Him by vote. You and I are going to give Him the same honor and respect by voting down here. That's what the mark is all about, folks.